let's get into it. All right, time for office hours, y'all. I'm Vashti. I'm the founder of Slidedesignr and your professor for today's session. Just as a quick introduction, if you don't know me, haven't worked with me, I come from both the supplier and the client side. So I've been specializing in making insights deliverables for qual and quant for over 15 years now. I focus just on that. And I've been doing that for tons of research companies and brands. And in that time, after working on just thousands and thousands of slides created by researchers, right? One of the problems I see over and over again is the issue of Wordy slides. And so I wanted to get into that today. And I wanted to talk about that and like why it matters, right? Basically, a lot of researchers like to write in PowerPoint, just like they would in Word, right? But it's a totally different medium. So they struggle with taking like long bulleted lists and like big paragraphs and turning that into something more appropriate for a visual medium. That can be a difficult bridge, a difficult gap, right, to get over. How do I turn this into this, right? So there are times though when you really do want your client to be able to read something. You want to write something intentionally as like a leave behind or something for them to read with a cup of coffee or something like that, right? So basically writing a wall of text should be an intentional act. But often what I see is the unintentional wall of text, and it doesn't have to be. It more than likely, if you're looking at a wall of text, it doesn't have to be. And more than likely, you're looking at a missed opportunity to turn those words on the page into images. And it can be difficult to figure out when to do that, right? So I call that process rescuing images from text, because it literally is like going into your paragraph and pulling out all the opportunities to create images from that, so that your client isn't then looking at a dense paragraph. It's all the same information, but we've laid that out visually in a way that's easy to consume, bit by bit by bit. So this is what people mean by pretty slides, right? But as you can see, it's rooted in your writing. So if your writing isn't clear, how do you get there, right? So I want to talk about 4 of the most common mistakes people make when they're writing their slides. And if you fix those 4 things today, your slides will be drastically better than they were before. This isn't by any means an exhaustive list of all the things I see when it comes to writing and sort of the lack of editing and the lack of clarity, but like these are kind of a big 4 to start with. So first, like this live was inspired by a real client, a real conversation I had. I had designed like a really infographic slide for her, and it was based on their content, right? So was able to take that and turn that into an infographic. But then they handed me another slide that had like 3 to 4 like dense paragraphs on it, like seriously like academic prose, long, like needlessly wordy, repetitive sentences, and we'll get into repetition. And so I go, is it possible to edit this down for clarity? Which we're going to go over that today. And they go, no. And I go, a few of these sentences are kind of saying the same thing multiple times. And they go, well, it's already been approved, so we're not changing it, right? And so then they were surprised when instead of an infographic like the other slide, I came back, I responded with a magazine style layout. Something to make that prose, all those dense paragraphs, at least easier for the audience to read. If you're giving your audience dense paragraphs to read, the implication is I want you to read this, right? So make it easy to read. Give it a lot of white space like a magazine layout. So basically, if what's wanted though is an infographic, short, punchy, attention grabbing, like an infographic is written with like dense, concise, very short sentences, very, very short sentences. And very few of those sentences are written out as sentences, right? A good infographic replaces words and numbers with big data points, with diagrams, with graphs, with icons. So it's nearly impossible if you're going to take a long, wordy academic sentence, with no like really clear sort of point and turn that into a single icon. So it really does start with your writing. So there's an inverse relationship And I want to get into that. I'll show some slides today, and I'll keep this in normal view because we're going to actually work on some slides today. There's an inverse relationship, between how wordy a slide is and how graphical it can be. So the fewer words there are, the more images, the more infographic your slide can be, right? But the more words, then the fewer images and the more legible it should be. That's the inverse relationship. You kind of have to take a hard look at your slides and go, have I done enough editing? Have I created enough clarity in order to make space, in order to create the opportunity for images and create that infographic slide? If not, then your strategy is to go for legibility. Okay, how do I make this as easy to read as possible? Because it's just going to be words on the page, right? So there's that inverse relationship. And like our aim is always clarity. It's always clarity because clarity is what drives action, right? So whether it is infographic or legible, and again, that choice should be intentional and not because of a lack of time or you didn't take the time to edit it or think about it or give it another go. We're aiming at the highest possible version of your insights to give them the greatest chance at life, right? We're not trying to just put things on slides and just squeak over the line and make deadlines. Like, that's not the point. I mean, like, also that we have to make deadlines, right? But we don't miss deadlines, but we don't sacrifice the quality of our work for them. And because we're trying to impact, big decisions here, $1 million decisions, sometimes $1 billion decisions. So we're trying to make an impact with every single slide. That quote I had, if you were up here in the waiting room before I went live, it's basically that every word on the page has work to do. So what I'm going to help you with is making your writing impactful first, because impactful writing is taught, it's lean, it's dense with meaning. Like, every word is there for a reason. There's no fat on it. And that's like what a veteran, like stand-up comedian might say. You might have heard somebody like Chris Rock or like Jerry Seinfeld or Joe Rogan say something like that, right? Like, that joke had no fat on it. And it's true. Like, if a joke is weighed down with like extraneous, doesn't need to be there words, like, the joke won't land. It won't land. The comedian, who doesn't take the time to hone their jokes down to like a scalpel, to their bare essence, will bomb on stage. Like, you're not gonna laugh. You're gonna be sitting there stone faced sipping your drink, like, and rightfully so, right? They didn't do the work. They didn't do the work to cut the fat off that joke. And so likewise, wordy insights weighed down by a bunch of extraneous filler won't make an impact. And you'll bomb. Like, that slide will bomb because it makes for difficult reading and requires your audience to expend the energy to extract out the meaning, to trim the fat off of it on their own for you, right? And so the greater like implication of that is, if you hand your wordy writing, if you take a slide that's just, you wrote an outline or whatever, and you hand that to a designer, you're leaving the most important work up to them, who often wasn't close to the research, doesn't understand research, right? They're not you. You're the expert who's crafting these insights. But they have to guess. That designer has to guess at what to extract out as important. How to interpret the meanings, how to interpret the nuance and the context and the connections between words, and then represent that visually. And if they get it wrong, like, you either have to spend long hours managing that by writing, the long email with please revise, blah, 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 blah. Slide 5, do this, you have to write that long, annoying email, or hop on the phone or whatever it is. So that's time. Or you have to jump in at the 11th hour and fix those slides yourself. And so what did you get for your money there? You hired somebody for X number of dollars an hour, and like, why? So I just want to be real with you. Like, when you don't do the work to edit your writing, frankly, you're leaving that work up to other people. Either your clients who are super busy and value their time, obviously, because they're going to have to look at dense, wordy slides and figure out what it means, or you're leaving it up to some junior, entry-level, intern, designer, whoever you gave your slides to make pretty. And that's frankly not their job. The job to do the hard work of extracting out the meaning is for you, the expert. So I want to give you the tools to be able to do that today. 'Cause there's too many opportunities I've seen left on the table. And so, as I'm fond of saying, when somebody says, "Can you make my slides pretty?" When I see slides that are busy and unclear, I don't see a design problem. I see a writing and editing problem. And most of the time, a time management and efficiency problem, but that's outside the scope for today. That's like another problem for another day. So that's what I want to help you learn and be able to evaluate on your own slides today. To be able to look at your own writing and check and see, am I leaving an opportunity on the table? Right. So I want to talk about these four common mistakes that people make. And again, I'm gonna keep these slides live because I want to actually work on slides today. So four of the most common mistakes. We're going to talk about filler words. We're going to talk about repetition. We're going to talk about hidden headings. We're going to talk about long lists of things. Each of these things, right, is something that's really, really, really easy to fix. It's something that you don't need to hire a designer for. So I want to get into it. And actually, I'm going to flip this. I'm going to start with repetition. I think this is really important to start with first, because this is like a super easy thing that you can fix right now. So repetition, and I've got examples in here that have been sanitized from actual slides, actual client work. And so I wanted to show you these because these are things I run into all the time. Now, repetition is basically when you have the same words, phrases, sentences, data labels, numbers, multiple times on the same slide. And this first example might seem like innocent enough, right? But we're fighting for fractions of an inch on every single slide. And every little bit that can be nipped and tucked counts. I promise you, it adds up. Like, because there's not going to just be this one. There's going to be multiple instances of this kind of repetition, padding, filler on a single slide. So it all adds up, right? So here's one tiny example that I see over and over again. Something like this is, look how I tightened a sentence that broke over two lines into one line, was able to make that smaller and fit in a more concise space, right? So completed the survey online between May 24th and May 27th, 2022. I don't need to say May twice. I just don't. And I don't need the word between, right? Everybody in your audience will know that a dash, that's fairly universal, means between. So I can just say completed the survey online, May 24-27, 2022. That's it. And this is not even something on the slide that's honestly so important that it needs to take up 2 lines of copy. It's got to be on there, but we can reduce that down. That kind of repetition is something to seek out and destroy on your slides. So here's another kind of repetition. When I see something, again, the same words, data labels, phrases appear on the slide over and over and over again. So here's a sanitized actual slide. I haven't redesigned this one, and I'm not going to right now, but because there's a lot more going on here than just repetition. But when you have in your deck sections, right? In this particular deck, we're talking about multiple scenarios. So we've got scenarios A, B, and C, or in this case, this is scenario X, Y, Z. If you've got something at the top or something in a section break that made clear, now we're in XYZ scenario, as they've done up here, right? We've made clear, we've gone from scenario ABC to scenario XYZ. Then we don't need to keep saying XYZ scenario on the slide. We've established where we are in the deck, right? We've established we're talking about this particular, set of products or whatever it is in this exercise. And so in their writing, they said, again, in an XYZ scenario. You don't need that. You don't need that, right? I could just start the sentence here. And look what that did. It took 4 lines of copy. Now this big takeaway should be 1 line, another issue. But I just took it from 4 lines to 3. And that started to create a massive amount of space. Look how much space that created. I mean, if I undo that, right? Like I've opened up this entire area here underneath it. And that's what you'll find when you start killing this repetition. Look, this title also says it again. I don't need this big title taking up so much horizontal space. And I also don't need preference share in the title and preference share in my y-axis. I would choose one or the other. I would keep it in the title, right? So when you clean up places where you've said things multiple times on a slide, you start creating white space. You start creating opportunities little by little, bit by bit, to start visualizing, right? To start creating. And as I'll show you in the next couple of examples, to start bringing in some more visual elements, into your writing. So I want to get into also not just repetition, but filler words. This is a big one. This is a big, big, big one. And I feel like somewhere around like the 8th grade or something, when we were assigned book reports and we had to like magically fill 8 pages or something of like you're assigned 8 pages, you got to fill 8 pages, but we only have like 4 pages worth of anything to say. Like that's when we learned to pad and then like didn't unlearn that when we got into consumer insights, right? It's like we pad our sentences to somehow make them seem more important or more businessy. I'm not sure. Let me know in the chat like why people do this, because I still haven't figured out like the psychology behind it, but there's something there. It's something about making it feel longer and belaboring the point. But anyway, it's all at the expense, right, of conciseness, of understanding, of visual impact. So whatever the reason is, it's like stop. So these are needless words that if removed would make the sentence way more clear, and it wouldn't even change the meaning. It wouldn't change the meaning. It would actually elevate the meaning, make it more clear, and then give us the opportunity to then make that more visual. So there's a few in here that I see all the time. And if you see this in your writing, just seek and destroy, like get rid of it. Things like being beneficial for, right? That's benefiting. There's a word for that. In a hasty manner. Anytime you have an opportunity, just use the adverb hastily, the reason why is that. It's a big one. Because, right? Owing to the fact that, because, or since, due to the fact that. Anytime you see the fact that in your writing, it's you probably just mean because. So check that out, and you can save yourself some space. As well as is probably, I see it in like 95% of the decks that come my way, and it is always filler. As well as is always filler. As well as is like a linkage between two unclear sentences that with a little bit more effort, you could express one clear, cohesive idea, right? Here's an example, and this is a real one. So I'll read this out, and I'll zoom in on it so you can see. We heard a hunger for both clarity and role definition, as well as, ding, 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 a wish to be better able to visualize how those roles can be played in practice given the tensions present in the ecosystem's structure. Okay, I'm not 100% sure what that sentence means, so let's start breaking it apart. What's on the left side of as well as? We heard a hunger for both clarity and role definition. Okay, so that both tells me that they heard two things, right? They heard a hunger for clarity and role definition, and a wish to be better able to visualize how those roles can be played in practice. Okay, so both of those things are speaking to clarity. So isn't this entire sentence about clarity, right? So if I pull that idea out, we're seeking clarity. Respondents are hungry for clarity about two things. Respondents are hungry for clarity. A clearly defined role with clear guidelines around how to play it, right? A clearly defined role and clear guidelines around how to play it. And we can make this even more visual, by the way. This is just step one. We're just taking this sentence first and trying to extract out the meaning, right? We're setting this up to make it more visual, especially given structural tensions present in the ecosystem. So we haven't changed the meaning of that sentence. We're just setting it up in the next step to be able to turn that into something more visual. So here's another example. And this is a common one when You're writing a sentence that's basically narrating a chart. You could tell that this person was listing off things from punches from a chart. That touch slash feel is a dead giveaway. um, yeah, you don't have to like write the way the punch is formatted right into the sentence. There's a way to do that so you don't lose meaning, and so you're not being consistent with the data, right? So that's what this is kind of taking into account here. All of those things. Consumer desires from a retail are as expected. Good prices, can touch slash feel, wide selection, but simplicity. I don't know why that was in all caps. That's how they did it. Is sought as well, more so among millennials. Just background, this whole thing was about millennials, so I elevated that and said millennials seek simplicity. In addition to retail table stakes, such as our list of things, right? Good prices, wide selection, and the ability to touch and feel samples. So just kind of turning that into plain English for people, right? So we're not just reporting punches, the ability to touch and feel samples. Um, this is important because this is also setting up a visualization. And I'll show you what I mean by that in this next step. But those are filler words. And when you start getting rid of those, then you can do this next step. So we're getting kind of more and more into the visualization. So these are the same sentences from before, the ones that were fixed. So let's go to this first one. Respondents are hungry for clarity. A clearly defined role with clear guidelines around how to play it, especially given structural tensions present in the ecosystem. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. It's just that there's a heading that's hidden in that sentence. So a hidden heading is what I call it, is a missed opportunity to turn a sentence that perfectly summarizes the idea into a large, easy to read heading. We love those slides, right? That have big takeaways, big headings, right? Big font sizes. They're short, they're punchy, they're to the point. They're like, 3, 5, 6 words somewhere in there, and they take one line, like they're huge. There's an icon next to them. We love all of that. And why are we hiding them in our sentences? And that's what hidden headings is all about. It's about pulling those things out. So if I'm just going to copy and paste this again so I can work on it. This is my heading. Respondents are hungry for clarity, right? That's the whole idea summarized. I'm going to lock this so it doesn't move around. Yeah, okay. Now, if I take this and I'm going to erase this out because I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to take this, and if this is my heading, it gets big, it gets big, it gets big and clear. And I'm going to delineate that from my body text, which should be a different font color, which is probably going to be something more like a body font color like this, right? I might even highlight the word clarity in bold. Now there's another opportunity to further visualize this, and we'll get into that too. But I first just wanted to show you that you're hiding your headings in your sentences. There's more to be done with this, for sure. Now, if you're pressed for time, you could leave it like that, but I wouldn't leave that opportunity on the table, right? Like I said before, you kind of want to keep visualizing and visualizing until you can't anymore, until you're like, okay, this is as far as this can go. This one is not as far as it can go. Same thing down here. Millennials seek simplicity, right? That's our heading. They seek simplicity. I might even end it with a period or something like that, right? Like that's an easy idea to talk about. That's an easy idea to visualize. I'm taking this because it has the formatting already. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to paste that in, right? Now, if I know that this is about clarity, there's an opportunity there to visualize that with an icon about clarity, right? So maybe it's something about understanding, whatever it is, right? Maybe this guy. Maybe this is the guy. Whatever it is, right? And you can take that and, throw him to the side or whatever it is. Align middle with that, right? You can do something. Maybe it's like this, maybe make him the same color as that, so it's all consistent. You could do something like this and go, this is about clarity, right? You could not have done that before with we heard hunger for both, blah, 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 blah. Like, not really. because you weren't elevating that idea to the top and making it easy for your audience. In the previous example, your audience would have to, where is it? They would have to, like, really read it, think about it, maybe even discuss it before they got to, "Oh, they're hungry for clarity," right? Which is ironic because it's unclear. The sentence about clarity is unclear. Um, but you see what I mean? Then you can start visualizing this stuff. If I, touch and feel samples, blah, 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 like, I might pull in a photo to visualize that one and do, like, a cool, like, overlay kind of a thing. Let's see if I can crop this down. I've got somebody touching and feeling samples. I've got somebody who's kind of doing the thing we're talking about. Maybe this is a retail study, whatever it is, right? I'm gonna grab my copy and bring it to the front. Um, and I'm going to pop an overlay over this because it's gonna be hard to read, right? That's gonna be hard to read without having some sort of overlay on top of it. So what size is this? I'm gonna do a darker fill. Sorry guys, you're behind my camera, so it's a little hard to see. All right. Oops. I'm gonna grab that and not that, grabbing too many things. Yeah, we're gonna grab that and bring that to the front, and maybe that becomes a white fill or something like that. And then you could start laying out something like this that starts to look really beautiful on a slide, right? And you can do that because jumping ahead, because you've taken the time to, yeah, I'd probably put it there. You don't want to have words covering a human being. So, because you've taken the time to simplify that sentence, right? That's kind of the process, is pulling those headings out and then figuring out what that idea is and then visualizing that core idea. That's what hidden headings is all about. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but long list of things is the next one, because this is really the opportunity to start using icons and things. Now we've got a short list of things in our previous example, this clarity one, right? Because they wanted a clearly defined role and they wanted clear guidelines. Oh my God, say that 3 times fast. Around how to play it. That's technically 2 things, and we could visualize them separately. That was the opportunity I was talking about earlier. But I want to show you on a much longer list of things because I see this all the time. And this is a real missed opportunity to turn the items in that list into icons, into a diagram, into a timeline, into a journey, right? Or some other series of images. So this one is kind of all of those things we just talked about combined into one, right? This one is doing all of them. So I'll read this out just so you can kind of understand how I'm gonna tackle this and break it apart. So, and this is, by the way, sanitized. So if it doesn't make sense, like, that's why. This isn't like what the paragraph was actually about, but it's like more or less following the same structure, just so you can still use it as an exercise. So salesperson success challenges faced by training companies are often both technical and qualitative in nature. Many companies are not well equipped to address qualitative challenges due to siloed organizational structures and culture, corporate-centric versus human-centric mental models, lack of shared understanding about current salesperson and business realities, lack of trust amongst departments, and a lack of shared governance. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. The first thing I notice when I look at this, and I'm going to look at this sentence by sentence, and I recommend you do that too, is I'm going to look at this first sentence. And salesperson success challenges faced by training companies are often both technical and qualitative. Do I need in nature? They're often both technical and qualitative. End. Right? It's just sort of an unnecessary filler word. If there was something that was really meaningful, uh, I can't even think of an example where in nature would be so meaningful that I'd need to say it on a slide. I'm gonna cut it. But again, think about meaning. If it changes the meaning, it's not a filler word, right? If it's really just sort of there hanging out, taking up space, get rid of it, right? So I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna think of that as a potential hidden heading. There's something there that could be a heading. I'm not 100% sure yet, but I'm gonna let that one hang out on its own now that I've tightened it up a little bit. And I know that we're trying to tell our client that two things are happening here. I might highlight those. And I'm just gonna set that aside for a minute, right? So next we've got a big long list of things. So let's get into it, right? So many companies are not well equipped to address qualitative challenges, which we set up in the previous sentence, due to, okay, that due to is telling me that there's a list coming. So I'm going to separate that list out. I'm going to separate that out and I'm going to hang on to that. And then we're going to look at it. We're going to look at that. So this due to sentence is like an intro sentence. So this is going to be probably a heading to a visualization of this list. Probably, right? I don't know yet. But as I'm going through it methodically, that's how I would think about it. They're not well equipped to address qualitative challenges that we talked about due to, well, first, let's count how many things we have. We have siloed organizational structures and culture. Corporate-centric versus human-centric mental models. Lack of shared understanding about salesperson and business realities. Lack of trust amongst departments. Lack of shared governance. Okay. So I've got a list. I think I made that too, my spacing too much. I have a list of 5 things. Okay. I almost turned it into 6 by accident. It's 5 things. Couldn't I treat that list not like a bulleted list, but couldn't I represent each of those with icons? Couldn't I visualize that? Aren't each of those things sort of concrete enough that I could visualize them? And like, long story short, they are, right? So when you break it up this way, this is what I turn that into. When you break it up in that way, you can see very clearly what the function of each of those sentences is in that paragraph. That first one is setting up that there's 2 kinds of challenges, technical, qualitative. When it comes to the qualitative challenges, they can't address them. Here's this big problem that we're here to solve due to these 5 things. Boom, 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 boom. 5 things. And each of those things with an icon. I'm hoping that's making sense, right? When you take a bulleted list, if you break it apart, you can start to turn each of those things in that bulleted list into a concrete idea that can be visualized. And icons are a great way to do that. They're not the only way, but for a slide like this is how I would tackle it. And so this is how you take a dense paragraph. Well, you can't see the dense paragraph anymore because I undensified it. That's a word now. And turned it into this. So where's the hidden heading? And kind of a hidden subheading as well, right? And then how can I turn that list into a few things that, 1, 5 is a great number. 5 is a wonderful number because the human mind can only remember about 3 to 5 things really easily without needing to refer back to like some sort of mnemonic or something, right? 3 to 5 is perfect. And this sort of shape, which, it would be nice to have like 6 things, right? Because then you'd have like 2 even rows of 3 or whatever it was. But that layout, it's almost like the 5 die, right? If you roll dice, like the 5 looks like that, the 2 dots and the 1 in the middle. So I'm queuing up. You already know what 5 looks like. Does that make sense? Like, we have a visual language for 5, and I'm just going to borrow from that so that immediately it's clear, oh, there's 5 things. You don't even have to count that. If you just glanced at it, you would intuit there's 5 things, right? And so that's how easy we want it to be for our clients to be able to understand what we're saying. to literally be able to see what we're saying. So go through your writing today. Go through all of your writing today, and see if you've got filler words. See if you, as well as, oh my God, if you've got as well as, like, just delete, 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 and join those sentences together in a way that's clear and makes sense. If you've got repetition, you only have to say something on a slide once. If you're saying something multiple times in the space of one slide, you're wasting real estate, right? Pull out those hidden headings, elevate them with design, make them big, make them bold, and take those long lists of things and set them off with icons, right? Like, do those 4 things today, and your slides will get so much better. And you'll be in a better position to hand your slides off to a designer to keep elevating your design further. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, you need help actioning that, you've got a particular slide you want to look at, something you're struggling with, shoot me an email. You can always send an email to hello@slidedesignr.com. And yeah, that's all I got for today. Talk to y'all next time.